This is the Anything Show with John Francois.
Joe, how's it going?
Very, very good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being had. The Financial Heresy podcast, I'm listening to it. Obviously, you have great financial expertise. So the number one question I was thinking of when I was just starting to listen to your podcast was, man, inflation, like the inflation of today. You probably have gotten this question before. Like, how did we get here? Is this something that could have been preventable? Is this COVID related? Just kind of break down in layman terms what the inflation of today means.
Yes, absolutely. It's a great question because we lived for so long where people thought inflation was a thing of the past. And really what's going on here is kind of like an ice cube. You have an ice cube, let's say it's 25 degrees. You increase the temperature of that ice cube 1 degree at a time and nothing happens. It stays a solid block of ice. And then you get to 32 degrees, and as soon as you flip to 33, now suddenly it is water. And so it wasn't just that last degree that changed that ice to water. It was the accumulated energy buildup all the way there that finally then showed itself. And so it's the same thing with inflation. We had the same policies of easy money, artificially cheap credit for decades, and that funded this giant buildup of debt. And every single time something bad happened, they bailed the system out and didn't see inflation. And then so finally, they just went a little bit too far, printed a few $1 trillion too many, and that spilled over into the system and is causing a cascade of results that we see right now. So supply chains and things like that, those are just symptoms of the decades of financial irresponsibility.
And to get us out of this hole, how do you think that will happen? Will it happen anytime soon? God, I hope, because, we only have so much money to spend.
Right. Absolutely. Well, right now, what they are trying to do to prevent inflation from going any further is the opposite of what they've been doing. So they're basically making money more expensive. That's what interest rates going up means. So when money gets more expensive, that's debt getting more expensive. So we've got to pay off our debt because we can't afford to keep our current debt, and we definitely can't afford to take on new debt. But what most people don't understand is that debt was loaned into existence. So that's what debt does. It loans money into existence. When you swipe that credit card, those dollars didn't exist before you swiped that card. They were deposited into that account as fresh, newly created dollars. And so when we pay off debt, the exact opposite happens. That money ceases to be in circulation. It disappears from existence. So as debt gets more expensive from interest rates going up, the money supply actually starts to go down. And just like anything, supply and demand, when money supply goes down, the value of that money goes up relative to everything else, which means it takes less money to get stuff, which means prices go down. And so that's what the Fed is trying to do right now. And the unfortunate side effect of that is joblessness, unemployment, pay cuts, hours getting cut. It means you have less money going around. And so that's what they're trying to do. And we have probably the next 6 to 12 months ahead of us where we see the economy get more and more and more painful, joblessness going up, pay cuts happening, hours getting cut, wages getting cut. And the Federal Reserve is about to start to run victory laps. That's their goal right now, is to cause economic pain, to make sure people have less money so that people have to spend less money so that prices stop going up.
Yeah. Wow. And, speaking of that job market, it's just, it's such I feel like I'm just getting like complete opposite end of news in terms of the job market. It seems like one moment I'm reading that like, oh yeah, there's so many jobs. And on the other hand, you hear companies like Warner Bros. Discovery laying off people by the minute. So, is there a sensible consensus to how the post-pandemic economy is going, or is it just kind of easy to say that it's just flippity-floppity right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're getting into something, the difference between leading indicators and lagging indicators, basically things that point to what just happened in the past and things that point to what was going to be happening in the future. So when 2020 started, they printed a bunch of money, mortgage rates went down, everybody cash out refinanced, and then refinanced, their mortgage payments went down. People were flush with cash, less expenses. That gave everybody the freedom to say, you know what, I'm going to leave this job that I've hated for 10 years. I'm going to go try and find a better one. And so that started this whole cycle where then companies had to pay more and more and more to attract people. And that was just, this snowball effect. We're seeing that slow down right now. We're seeing not yet widespread layoffs and widespread unemployment, although we're seeing, like you mentioned, certain companies in specific places are starting to do that. But we are seeing, hey, hiring has risen in many companies. The leading companies, a lot of the tech companies, we're seeing some of the layoffs start to happen. We're seeing hours getting cut, which is the first thing employers start to do before they actually lay people off, because they'd rather just cut hours if they can. So we're seeing a lot of these indicators that point to the future saying, hey, things are about to start getting tougher, while the things in the recent past are still showing signs of strength. Really, our jobs market is running on steam, and it looks like it is flipping around to becoming, more and more dangerous for the employee.
All right. Well, let's talk housing. So my fiance is in the process of closing on a house that she got a good buyer for. And, what I've been hearing for the past, year or so is that this is a seller's market. This is a seller's market. You can sell your house, but good luck trying to find a house. How do you foresee this housing market going for buyers? Is it going to kind of slowly turn back into a buyer's market in the next few months or a year, or is it just kind of hard to tell? Like, what's your perspective?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question, and this kind of hints at the reasoning for the name of my podcast, Financial Heresy. Heresy, it means an opinion that is profoundly at odds with what is generally accepted. And so the housing market doesn't look to me like it is in any danger at all of a major catastrophe. And so when we look at, 12 years ago, there were way more houses than there were people who needed somewhere to live. There were way more housing units. And so there are a bunch of empty homes. That is not the case today. We had about a decade where home builders did not build any homes. We have a major undersupply right now of places to live, compared to all the people who need a place to live. Our population has continued to grow, but our number of housing units in the country has not. And so what we see is a major supply and demand imbalance. And that is why both rents and home prices have both been going up for years. You would not see that if you had an imbalance of supply and demand the other way. If you had a bunch of empty homes, you'd have rents being really low. You'd have opportunities for being able to sell. And so right now, what we have is a lot of people locked in to mortgage rates that are 3%, 2.75, 3.5%, whereas they're looking at mortgages now and they're 6%, 7%, 8%. And the prices are not lower. And so they're saying, look, I cannot afford to buy a new house. And if you can't afford to buy a new house, guess what you also can't do? You can't sell your current house. And guess what? These people can't go and rent either, because the rent is more expensive than their mortgage. And so people are locked into their homes right now and cannot afford to sell, whether they want to go rent or want to go buy another place. Most people can't afford that. So we have this gridlock that is going to prevent home prices from collapsing, because to have a collapse, you need everybody to sell, and nobody can sell right now. And so housing, I think, is one of the areas of strength in our country moving forward for at least the next 5 to 10 years.
Wow. Well, Joe Brown, host of the podcast Financial Heresy, it is definitely great, especially for people like me who are just completely dumb in this area. So like to have you just kind of break it down into layman's terms is certainly helpful. I appreciate you being on the show, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
The Anything Show with John Francois on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get podcasts. Join us on YouTube, Facebook.com/The Anything Show, and Instagram and TikTok @Anything Show Francois.